Well, I wish I would have done this video earlier in the season when everything was still fresh and in its prime, but it's also probably a good idea to do it now here on September 16th to show what the gardens look like as fall looms near. I forgot what those flowers were called, but they were continuously blooming as long as you kept them cut back, and they're annuals. And my husband has planted various garden varieties here: kale, rosemary, basil, lots of tomatoes, which have now been mauled by the deer despite our attempts to keep them out. A variety of mint, which I've used in herbal teas by drying them out. Have some zinnias here in a pot that have been blooming since June. Some more basil. I have roses here, but I'm thinking about, I have 5 rose bushes in here. It's kind of hard to see them all. 2 pink, 2 coral, and a yellow, but they are really not great pollinator plants at all. So I might replace them with some other varieties. I have some purple phlox in there, which butterflies and hummingbirds and bumblebees, just everything, absolutely love. And I have several phlox plants, but the deer also love them. Phlox there. Some purple coneflower, which is still blooming. And I have another coneflower here in a pot, which I need to get planted. It never bloomed, but it was a volunteer from last year, because that pot had actually, it was empty, and then suddenly a coneflower came back. I've got several varieties of coneflower in here. There's a Lakota fire echinacea down there. In the back, later in the season, I planted a foxglove. I've got some First Love Veronica speedwells back there. There's a big liatris here. Some yellow yarrow, which is faded out, and I see now the deer have eaten that. More phlox, another liatris. And I want to point out, anybody growing any tall plants like liatris, definitely get a head start on putting tomato cages around them, because they will do so much better. Got some Monarda bee balm, a beautiful bright pink Monarda there, and another bee balm over here, which are absolutely loved by butterflies, hummingbirds, and bees. Some hostas. This is a very sad shape of peony, which got some powdery mildew on it. For some reason, it was the only one that did. Here's 2 of my several sedums, also known as stone crop is another name. These are still blooming, so another very good specimen to have in your pollinator gardens, because, you know, as butterflies, or specifically monarchs, are fueling up for their migration, it's very important to have flowers still blooming at this time of year. Let's come around here down these steps, and I just planted 2 small plants of this other bee balm, and the name escapes me at the moment, but I wasn't sure it was going to do well, but then it finally took off, and it's a lovely variety. Spotted bee balm, that's it. Spotted bee balm I got from a pollinator garden place in Council Bluffs. I'll have to look that up, see where that was. So I love this. It was my first year growing spotted bee balm, and it was a big hit. I've got 5 swamp milkweed plants here. It's really hard to see. I just planted them this year. They were about 10 to 12 inches tall when they went into the ground, and they got to be about 3.5, 4 feet tall. Oh my goodness. And what a treat we have here. What is this? There we go. Got a big old caterpillar. Yay. So that's fun. And several seed pods are bursting. I can see some more sedums. Again, lots of flowers available to migrating monarchs. Right behind that is a big patch of heirloom burgundy bee balm, which I didn't, because I had such a huge growth in my pollinator garden this year, I did not stay on top of that. I did not get them deadheaded, so I only got the one bloom on that. There's a yellow rose behind it, actually 3 yellow rose bushes behind it, which again are not really pollinator friendly. So I'm gonna have to get that little guy before he becomes bird food. Put him in my enclosure today. Come back over here. This is all new. We had a retaining wall rebuilt this last summer, 2022. So I have some more bee balms too that I got right there, and some alyssums in the circle behind. Lots of butterflies flying around right now. Hopefully we'll see some on the camera. I planted some several Monarda plants in here. They by seed. I planted from seed, and so that was a very slow growing. I mean, I planted these in June, and they were very slow starting. This area is very hard to keep wet because my sprinklers don't hit it, so I was out here twice a day during the hottest days watering. I have lots of zinnias, pinwheel zinnias here, which of course they are not technically native, but they are an incredible source of nectar for butterflies and bees and everything. So I planted a lot. I literally have a 30-foot long wall here, and the entire upper section is all zinnias, a variety. More zinnias here. Zinnias, and buried in here, which it's really hard to see, I have I think 6, 7, I have like 7 butterfly bushes in here, variety of kinds. It's hard to see, but there's the flowers to one, because they got kind of buried by the zinnias that I planted in here, which I will not do that next year. But you know, blooms forever, and because of that I have had tons of butterflies and bumblebees and hummingbird moths, and unfortunately wasps as well, which, yes, they are pollinators, but solitary wasps are very big on taking caterpillars and taking them into their holes wherever they have a hole, whether it be in a piece of wood or down in the ground, and that's what they feed their larvae with. So it's kind of like, you know, a necessary evil, if you will. But anyways, so it's hard for me to walk around. I planted some Mexican sunflower, and this plant's got about 8 to 10 feet tall and has fallen over. Well, there was actually several. I didn't thin them out, so that was a problem. So I'm gonna stand up on this wall. Oh, and here's one of the varieties of my butterfly bush. I have like 4 or 5 tutti frutti butterfly bushes. On the outside of the fence in my neighbor's yard, I planted several hundred seeds of wildflower mix, but along the fence I planted probably a dozen varieties of sunflowers, and those plants literally got 12 feet tall. Butterflies do like those, but they were the most preferred by the finches. So I had tons of finches enjoying the seeds. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do something different with my Mexican sunflower next year. I need to do a better job of getting it, securing it with a trellis. There's a trellis back there, and it did really great at holding the Mexican sunflower that was planted behind the trellis. So that held it up. I'm standing on a wall, and so this is still probably 4 feet above my head. But anyway, everything's looking really rough right now, but oh, when everything was fresh and in full bloom, it was absolutely gorgeous. So this is actually a different butterfly bush. I don't have a sign for what type it is, but it just has a different leaf structure and branching structure. It was much fuller and bushier, so I really like that. It's the only one I have. I planted 3 swamp milkweeds over here. I only managed to get 1 in a tomato cage, and so that helps hold them up, because otherwise, as you can see, those big branches here, that's swamp milkweed, and they fall over. They get so top heavy that they fell over. And we were actually in Colorado for the 4 days in August that got to 115 heat index, and there were sprinklers on in the mornings, but not enough. And by the time we got back, it was evident a lot of our plants had suffered. So, like this one completely fell over. We did stake it, but the stake even broke or fell over, whatever it was. So there's 3 very large swamp milkweeds there, with more zinnias at the bottom, a smaller variety that don't get very tall. Another butterfly bush over there, which I need to support that better. That was supposed to be a red, white, and blue Buddleia butterfly bush, but the winter was very tough on several of my butterfly bushes. I actually had to replace like 5 of them because it was a very dry winter, and so that one we thought was dead and surprised us by coming back. However, the only color that survived on the plant was the blue. The pink and the white did not survive. There's another swamp milkweed right here. I had actually planted 3 in this spot, and we thought only 2 came back, so I dug them out and relocated those. But then later on, this one ended up surviving after all, which was a nice surprise. So I immediately put a tomato cage around it and protected it at the base so that my husband wouldn't accidentally weed whack it. And it's currently the best looking one because it holds the most moisture right here because of the sprinklers. Swamp milkweed needs to be consistently moist all season long to do its very best. Down below here, I have, I think, 6 butterfly weeds planted. They did very well here because they don't have a lot of moisture. I had to hand water the swamp milkweeds to the back just to make sure that they stayed moist, and careful not to put too much water on butterfly weed because they are extremely susceptible to root rot. But I must have done it right because they did very well. However, I did not see a lot of caterpillar activity on the butterfly weed. Probably partly because they're low to the ground, right here below the swamp milkweeds, and also they're just not as preferred by the monarchs as they are the swamp milkweed. The swamp milkweed just had so much caterpillar activity on it, and they had the big beautiful pink blooms, a lot of bursting seed pods I can see. So anyway, like I said, all that garden space is all new for 2023. That whole area. It's about 30 feet long of a garden bed. This space is my second year. This was my first pollinator garden space. It's about 10 feet wide, I believe, and I had it protected from the deer. In here, I've got Veronica Speedwell, which is a perennial. Gaillardia blanket flowers in there. Yellow and purple cone flowers in there, which are all perennials. And then in the middle there, those still blooming, is some zinnias, which those are annuals. However, they will self-seed. So it's quite possible that if I do nothing, I will get more in next spring. There is one swamp milkweed. That was the very last one of the season I planted. I got it at Mulhall's. It fell over again. Still survived, still does fine. The branches will reach for the sun, but I definitely need to make sure to tomato cage that or stake it somehow next year so that it doesn't do that. And then also in here, I planted an annual. I planted 3 red pentas, which the deer, because I didn't close it up while we were gone, the deer ate all the blooms off, except for a few. And then I have a couple beautiful coral color phlox in here, which the flowers, they've just died out. I didn't deadhead those. I should have. And some other phlox in here. And then these are beautiful. They're going to seed. I love it. These are Liguilistilis. It's another form of Liatris. I forget the common name, but it's slightly different than the regular Liatris because there's a bunch of little flower blooms that go all over it, and they are absolutely loved by pollinators. And as you can see, they are wildly going to seed, and that is awesome. All kinds of seeds. I'm surprised they're not cleaned off by the birds yet. And then there's also in the very center, can't see it, but there's a beautiful dwarf lilac in there that won't get very big. It's like 2 feet. And then in here I have another butterfly weed. It used to be a white one here, but it died again. It didn't survive the dry winter we had. So it was called Dapper White, but I replaced it with another, I can't remember, it's a purple variety, but I forget what it's called actually. But again, if you deadhead them, they will continuously bloom. And I did deadhead these, I think once or twice this year. And then inside this caged area was a Colorado, it was like a multiple color pink, drawing a blank here, yarrow, sorry. Yeah, and then where the swamp milkweed is, I actually had the traditional white yarrow, wild white yarrow, but it absolutely completely took over the space, and so I ripped it out. And I'm sure, oh yeah, it's gonna grow back because there it is. You can see I'll go into the net here. So it's growing back. So I will have to keep control of that so that it doesn't take over. So yeah, there was, oh, that was red yarrow, red vintage yarrow over there, and then I have some pink yarrow. Anyway, oh, there's some more coneflower. That plant is beautiful and green. It started from a very small plant this year. It never flowered just because it spent all its time creating foliage, but I do see right now there is a bloom that might come out before this season is over. So that's pretty neat. So yeah, I have a variety of native and non-native species, both annual and perennial. This area is kind of a hot mess. I have all in that upper row there is liatris, but because they don't get sun until the afternoon, they tend to get really tall and leggy and then they fall over. So that's what happened there. And below there is some, oh, I forgot what those things are called. I know people watching this are gonna know what that is. My brain's not working today. So I have several of all those right there are all volunteers. I had planted these annuals last year and I did not plant them again because the deer ate them, and they all grew back. So that was awesome. And there's a volunteer basil. Not sure how that got there. And here's some more alyssum, which I just wanted some kind of cover to keep that area moist. And then this was a coneflower that I failed to plant last year, and I thought I killed it because it was in a pot, and it ended up coming back after all. So I was happy about that. So I'll have to get that in the ground. It's a pink one. And there's a coneflower in that pot I need to get into the ground. Volunteer tomato plant. Not sure how that happened, but we just let the yard kind of do what it wanted this year. We didn't pull things. I even let weeds grow. There's a weed over there by my shed. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna see what this thing looks like. And there it is. 2 weeds, and the deer actually ate the tops off, and it ended up flowering anyways. So just wanted to see, you know, that's part of the fun of doing this, is just experimenting and then letting things do what nature wants them to do. So anyway, this chicken yard used to be beautifully full of like spirea bushes, Stella de Oro lilies, 9 rose bushes, and it was full when we first enclosed it for our chickens, and they literally destroyed the place. They had a good time eating all that stuff. And then on the outside of the netting is more sedums, which are blooming and are being enjoyed by bees and butterflies alike. Also, before I go, one last thing. Outside this fence, which I neglected this year just because I had so many plants to deal with, there is some butterfly weed out there underneath all that grass. And then that tall brown stocky stuff right there is the second year of Joe Pye weed, which a friend gave to me off a Nextdoor app. She gave me 1 sprig she dug up, and I literally thought it was not going to survive last year because I got it in the month of July. It was too hot to be transplanting, but it came back and did pretty well this year. So I expect next year it'll probably be twice as big as it was this year. But I need to get in there and pull that Bermuda grass, or whatever kind of grass that is that just took over. That's in my neighbor's yard, but he let me plant out there. And then my husband's got he planted potatoes in one of those areas outside the fence, and he's already harvested the potatoes. And then in the other rectangle, he planted tomatoes, and we had a lot of tomatoes this year. So that went really long, but now you get an idea of, you know, the pollinator gardens and the varieties of plants you need. And you do need some density so that they have shelter, but you also do need to maintain to make sure weeds do not overtake. So I was constantly pulling weeds, which is why that's the only reason why you can see dirt right there, is because if I didn't keep the weeds pulled, that would be full of parslane and other, they're not really weeds. I mean, parslane is a very beneficial plant, but it's very aggressive. So I kept it pulled because I just did not have time to be working with natural herbs this year. It's another butterfly. I think that was a painted lady that's flying over there. But anyway, enjoyed the season. Next year it will be an extra challenge because my mother is moving in with us at the end of this month. She's 85, and so I will be very busy taking care of her. But you know, if I have to skip a season, that's okay. Everybody enjoy this beautiful day in Nebraska. sunny after it rained for a little bit this morning. Take care.